and let's get going. Thank you all for being here. Happy Thursday evening. Hope you are staying cool wherever you are in the world. So glad to have you here on what is the third part of a four-part series. So we are going to get started. If you've been with us before, you might be familiar with the Destination MBA series. This is the third of a four-part series detailing your MBA journey. I'm going to talk through the key components of the MBA application process, including what you can be doing now, including key milestones to reach in the coming months, and discuss how you can effectively position yourself for top programs. Yes, the session is being recorded and it will be sent to you in the coming days. So let's get rolling. Before we begin, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Laura Nelson. I have a BFA from Carnegie Mellon University, where I studied art, and I'm also a full-time graduate of the MBA program at the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan. I was a member of the admissions committee there in my second year of study. And before business school, I worked in film and television. So I had a very nonlinear path going into business school and coming out of school. And following graduation, I entered the tech industry for over a decade. I held general management roles and was most recently a VP of marketing at a software startup. And my last two companies exited through acquisition. I've also been an MBA admissions consultant for 15 years, with two of the top consulting firms, and now with Target Test Prep. I've steered hundreds of MBA clients to top programs, and I'm also a member of the Association of International Graduate Admissions Consultants, which gives us direct relationships and connections to admissions committees at top programs. So over the past 15 years, I've worked on almost every program imaginable, including the full-time, part-time, online, executive, and dual degree applications at top programs like these that you see on the slide, along with many others that are not on this list. So now that you've learned a little bit about me, I'd love to learn more about you. So in the chat, could you share what your target MBA programs are? It would be great to see what you all are pursuing. So feel free to use that chat, and I'll pause and give it a moment while that loads up. I will be keeping an eye on the chat throughout this session, but keep in mind that I'll be talking at the same time. So if I don't get to your question, I will ask you to ask it again after. Oh, great. We see Harvard, Wharton, INSEAD, Stanford, Booth, Marshall, Ross, Northwestern, Emory, Haas, London Business School, Darden, Yale, Fuqua, Anderson, some more repeats, Stanford, Wharton. This is awesome to see. This is a great mix, and I will be talking directly about some of these programs tonight. So hopefully you find that valuable. So here is a high-level overview of what our four-part webinar series is designed to do. We're going to help you map out progress to complete your applications by either round 1 or 2. So the milestones that I'm highlighting will primarily map to round 1. However, you can adjust these activities as you see fit. So if you're rating to round 2, I highly recommend that you apply to at least a couple programs in round 1 if possible, but not at the expense of the quality of your application. So as I started to say, if you're waiting for round 2, that's totally fine. Just shift these deadlines. If you've been on the series before, you know that the MBA application process is long and daunting. I've shared this graphic before, and your path may be anything but straight. This is a really tough process to face alone, and I wouldn't always recommend it. So the highly competitive MBA process requires introspection, reflection, communication, and a high degree of EQ, among other things. My job here, on this webinar is to break this process down into smaller pieces for you and hopefully make it easier for you to tackle. So let's dive into today's agenda. Here are the things that I plan to cover. So first, I'm going to talk about those key milestones in the MBA application journey. In other words, if you're applying to round one, what are the key activities that you should be doing and when should you be doing them? Next, I'm going to talk about some of the essays for some of the most popular and most competitive MBA programs. So there are a number of changes this year with essay prompts, and that brings new challenges. So let's talk through some of those. Then I'll provide a high-level overview for how you can brainstorm, outline, and write the essays. We'll then talk about a few best practices and how you can set your recommenders up for success. And then finally, I'm going to leave time at the end for questions. So as I mentioned, I'm going to watch the chat as best I can as I go through this material. But if I miss your question, please ask it again at the end. So first, let's talk about those key milestones in the MBA application journey. So this is how some of the key activities for your MBA application process correspond to each of the months leading up to round one application deadlines. These, of course, happen to be the topics that we will be covering tonight. So if you're interested in continuing with this journey, make sure you join us in next month's webinar as well. We're going to be focusing on those activities in the yellow box tonight. These are the activities you can and should be focusing on now as you develop your MBA applications. Catch up on the May and June milestones too if you're just getting started. So next month, I'll wrap up the series with those final points before you submit your applications. So I mentioned a moment ago that a number of the top programs have changed their essay prompts this year, which makes it really challenging to go back and refer to prior year's examples. However, this is an opportunity for you, the candidates, to tell a story that the admissions committee hasn't seen and heard before. So it's always great to tackle something new. The 5 programs that I'm going to talk about tonight include HBS, Wharton, Stanford, Kellogg, and Fuqua. So glad to see those all represented in the programs that you are targeting tonight. If you are not targeting these programs, I think you will get some benefit out of how I talk about approaching these prompts and responding to them. I selected these because they're either the most competitive programs or the most difficult applications to tackle, or they challenge candidates in ways that other applications do not. So we are going to walk through them one by one. Before we dive into individual programs, though, I think it's really critical that you understand why MBA applications require candidates to write essays. In developing essays and evaluating them as part of the admissions process, the MBA Admissions Committee seeks to understand the following. So first, they want to understand who you are beyond your resume. What are your lived experiences? Who are you outside your professional career? How do you spend your time? What are you passionate about? Next, they want to understand how you've tackled various types of situations. So how do you react under stress? What have you learned from failure? What kind of leader are you? Along those lines and more. Next, they want to learn how you communicate in writing. So written communication is a critical skill for business. They want to know, can you communicate your ideas clearly and succinctly? Can you get a point across? Can you drive influence? That's what some of these essays help to provide, right? Next, they want to understand what you'll gain from the MBA experience and why you need it. So your motivations for pursuing an MBA aren't always clear through your other application materials, and MBA admissions committees want to know that you've thought this through. It's a big investment in terms of your time and money, and these programs want to ensure that you are going to be successful. Finally, MBA admissions committees develop essays to understand what you'll bring to the MBA cohort. So MBA programs are invested in building a diverse and interesting cohort, not just in terms of your background and nationality, but also in terms of your perspectives, interests, experiences, and more. So the essays are where your differentiated perspectives and experiences can really shine. So with that in mind, let's take a look at a few different programs. I'm going to add a huge caveat to this section by saying this is very generalized advice for how to think about these essays and programs. Everyone's individual situation is going to be a little different here, right? That's where an MBA admissions consultant can really work hand in hand with you and be helpful in guiding you to shape your stories. Another note, we aren't going to cover the optional or the reapplicant essays for each program today. Those require a really nuanced approach and significantly depend on your own situation. So again, these are other areas where individualized support will help you be successful. So what follows is meant to just help you understand what the program is asking and help you think through your approach for these core essays. So I'm going to start with HBS. These are new questions for this year. So previously, you had 900 words to tell admissions what they should know about you and your candidacy. This year, though, HBS has broken down what many candidates were already telling admissions into more distinct sections. So they include a business-minded essay, a leadership-focused essay, and a growth-oriented essay. So for those of you applying to Harvard, you probably already read these. I'm not going to read them out loud because I'd rather spend more time on the breakdown. So last year you had 900 words. This year you've got 800 total words to get these total points across. So let's break these down individually. First, let's take a look at the business-minded essay. If we're going to break this down, the prompt is simply asking you to reflect on how your experiences have inspired career choices and future goals. So take note, this prompt does not limit you to discuss professional experiences. It simply mentions experiences. So you got to ask yourself, what has shaped my career goals, professionally or otherwise? How have these experiences influenced what I want to do in the future? And the second part of the question asks about impact. So note, this is not just impact at a company or organization, but also mentions organizations and communities. So ask yourself what impact you want to make. And importantly, who is going to be affected by that impact? So for example, besides your company, what other organizations and stakeholders will you have an impact on in the future? So, right, that covers the business-minded essay. I know that's a quick and dirty rundown because I want to leave time for others. Let's talk about the leadership-focused essay. This prompt is asking what experiences have shaped who you are, how you invest in others, and what kind of leader you want to become. So take note, this essay, like the one before it, does not limit you to discussing professional experiences, though those can certainly be included. The HBS Admissions Committee wants to understand who you are as a person. How did you come to be? So consider your role in the world and how you help others. How should that show up in this essay? Think about the leader you'd like to become, both in the workplace and in life, and how that was shaped. But I will note both the business-minded and leadership-focused essays, these are really difficult. There's not a lot of words to play around with here, and you don't have room to tell full stories of your experiences from end to end. You have to give admissions committee just a taste of the variety of your experiences and tie them all together. So the third essay here is about growth and curiosity. And this can manifest itself in any area of your life. So here's a few tips to keep in mind. This should be one example, not many. So you don't have enough words to tell several stories. So stick to what the prompt is asking here and talk about one. Here, you don't need to limit yourself to a professional example either. Curiosity can take shape in any area of your life. And then finally, it's critical that the example showcases some sort of growth. That's where true learning comes in. And don't discount the possibility of talking about a failure. I know many MBA candidates shy away from sharing failures, but these are often when true learning and transformation come in. So don't hesitate to lean in on that. Again, these are not easy to tackle in the word counts we're given here, but that's one aspect that makes HBS one of the most difficult applications to tackle. And of course, it's one of the most competitive programs. I really look forward to seeing how these shape up for my clients and other candidates in this year's application cycle. So let's move on to the next one, which is Wharton. The good news is that Wharton's essays are not changed from last year. So there's a lot of advice out there. However, the Wharton essays always pack a punch. So the program wants to know the following, and you can see them, the essays on the slide here. And I'll get into how you should think about these essays. You can boil Wharton's objectives down to what you'll get from the program and what you're going to give. So in essay one, you get to focus on the get portion. Wharton's admissions committee wants you to understand specifically how the program is going to facilitate your professional goals. So as part of this essay, you'll identify what your career goals are in terms of a role, company, target industry in the short and longer terms. However, don't stop there. Think holistically about what type of leader and professional you want to be as well. Then you've got to discuss the ways that Wharton's program will facilitate your goals. So consider classes, programs, initiatives, internships, experiential learning opportunities, and more. These are all opportunities to both advance your career and your professional development. All right, so that's a summary of what you're going to get from Wharton, because the second essay is complementary. This is what you're going to give to the program. So think about that contribution, right? Focus on the keyword in the question, which asks uniquely. Think about what can you contribute to the cohort that nobody else can, and think holistically about this. So like essay one, you're going to have to dig into Wharton's offerings, its culture, student experience to understand what may be feasible and differentiated about what you'll bring to the cohort. You got to do your research. This means go beyond the website, talk to students to really understand how to answer this question effectively. I hope that gives you an understanding of the give and get facets of the Wharton application essays, because now we're going to shift to Stanford. These are long-standing essay questions. They include what matters to you most and why Stanford. So let's dig into these. Essay A is often where people struggle, right? This is very esoteric and open-ended. Consider your core themes in your life. These will likely extend beyond your professional career. And I mentioned themes, plural, because you're the sum of your experiences rather than on a single track of experiences. So a number of candidates come to me and try to wrap this essay up in a bow with a single theme, but don't force it if that's not the case for you. Think about painting a picture for the Stanford admissions committee with numerous colors rather than one, right? So don't be afraid to share different colors of your palette. This does not mean that you should talk about 10 things. Focus on a core set of experiences and themes that are most important to you. Next, avoid telling the admissions committee what you think they want to hear. So this is true for many of the essay topics we're going to discuss, but it's particularly critical to remember this for Stanford. Please do not say the most important thing to you is helping people, especially if you're not dedicating your life to really important human-related causes. And if you are, you can be more specific in articulating how you help people and the types of problems that you're solving and how that brings you satisfaction. But helping people is a very generic response to this, and I urge you to get more specific and more relevant to your life, because you have to support your themes with specific examples from your life. So along the lines of helping people, I've had candidates come to me with this goal in mind, but no real experience to back it up. And if helping people or building just diverse teams and communities is really important to you, just please provide substantive experience to back this up. This is what the admissions committee is looking for and needs for this question. They want authentic responses to this, not to be pandered to. So make sure that your examples really fit the themes that you are discussing as part of this response. The next essay tackles why Stanford. So the key word here in this question is aspirations. Think holistically about this beyond just a job that you want to attain in the future. Stanford attracts dreamers, innovators, and people who are going to make an impact in their respective companies and communities and industries and in the world. So think holistically. What are your aspirations? When you discuss your case for attending Stanford, be specific. This is where you're going to discuss the curriculum, programming, environment, culture, extracurriculars, the location, and how they're going to help you realize these aspirations. Again, this is a really tough application, but hopefully a fun and potentially inspiring exercise for you. I'm going to shift gears here and move over to Evanston, Illinois to talk about Kellogg. These are brand new essays for this year, and you can see the verbiage here. I'm going to break down these questions. So question 1 is essentially asking the following: why MBA? What is your goal? Why now? Whoop. And why Kellogg? What do you hope to contribute? You really need to be concise in your response here and connect the dots from your goals and intentions to Kellogg's program. Second, I do not encourage you to simply write a list of courses, programs, and clubs. You're going to discuss some in your response, but you really have to be selective in connecting them to your goals. I think Kellogg is asking a lot here for this first question. And unfortunately, you as a candidate, you don't have the word count to be exhaustive. So you have to demonstrate that you're focused, intentional, and a clear communicator. So let's take a look at question 2. It asks you to describe a professional experience when you made a difficult decision, the role of your values, and how this experience influenced your leadership style. So here's how you should think about approaching this. Choose one professional experience. Note this is not more than one, and it's not an experience that is not professional. Additionally, be succinct in your storytelling. So you'll want to give the reader an understanding of what happened in this situation, but unfortunately, you cannot use all of your word count to tell the story from end to end, because you have to ensure that you address the values and leadership styles portions of the question. This is really crucial and a common mistake to gloss over, like with a sentence wrapping up, or miss it altogether. You've got to allocate a little more space to that to be effective in answering this question. So Kellogg has notoriously really challenging essays, and I think they really upped the ante this year. So, curious how this really works out for candidates. The last analysis at a high level I'm going to do is Fuqua. So this is a fan favorite among MBA candidates because those who are drawn to Team Fuqua are also likely to have some fun with their essays here. So I'm going to break it down into 3 parts. First, starting with the short answer. The short answer prompt asks for your short-term post-MBA career goals. So that means immediately post-MBA, along with your alternate plan. I recommend, again, you have to communicate your plans concisely. 100 words goes by really quickly in this response. However, equally important is to demonstrate flexibility and adaptability to changing market conditions. So carefully consider your plan B. If you were on last month's Destination MBA webinar, you might remember that due to the dynamic job market, admissions directors all over were talking about flexibility and adaptability among the MBA candidate pool. Unfortunately, you don't know what economy and job market you're going to be graduating into in 3 years. So you really need to have a backup plan. So Fuqua asks about this specifically in their application, but I guarantee this is probably going to come up either in the short answer of another program and or in your interviews as well. So make sure you're prepared to answer this, regardless of whether you are applying to Fuqua. Let's talk about essay 1. Candidates, I find, love or hate this essay. It is very different from some of the essays that we've discussed. This essay asks you to share interesting tidbits, experiences, observations, passions, and more with the admissions committee. I was told just a few weeks ago by the Fuqua admissions directors that they get so much value out of responses from this essay and learn so much about candidates. So I encourage you not to hold back here. One tactic you might consider is to crowdsource ideas from family and friends for responses to this essay. And another idea, if you are stuck, refer to Fuqua's examples from the program's blog. You'll hopefully be inspired what you find there, because they had a number of their admissions committee members respond to this question as well. And then finally, essay 2 for Fuqua is about contributions. So they ask, what are 3 ways that you expect to contribute to Fuqua? So here again, you need to be specific. Your research really matters. Talk to current students and consider the diverse ways that you are going to contribute to the cohort. If you're stuck here, ask yourself the following: what kind of student and teammate will I be? What am I good at that is going to benefit others? Where do I want to assume a leadership role? How am I going to occupy my time outside of class? And if you're a full-time MBA student, you're going to have a lot of it. And what is the Fuqua experience missing that I can provide? So avoid the temptation just to list 3 clubs and say you're going to be an officer in them. That's not very differentiated. Use this as an opportunity to show the admissions committee that you understand Fuqua's specific culture and program and share your unique value proposition. So I know that's a lot. We covered a lot of ground in a short period of time here, but that was, again, a very high level analysis of how to think about these challenging essays. They're not always easy. So if you're stuck, please collaborate with an experienced MBA admissions consultant. And again, keep in mind the goals of these applications essays. So I'm sharing this slide again so you can remember the objectives. The MBA admissions committee wants to learn more about you and how you operate and how you think and how your perspectives have been shaped within your career and outside of it. So make sure that your essay responses align with some of these objectives. So the next part, we're going to talk about some best practices for brainstorming and writing. So many of these candidates look to these questions and have no idea where to begin, and I totally understand that. So I'm going to walk through a few ideas of how you might consider starting this process. These are just a few activities to consider, but I do recognize that everyone's going to go about this a little differently. So first, I recommend that you break the questions into parts and consider all areas of your life, not just professional examples. So really parse through that wording. If the question doesn't specifically ask about a professional example, widen your lens to consider other areas of your life. Next, don't be afraid to ask friends, family members, and others to crowdsource ideas as necessary. People who might know you well might be able to weigh in with some ideas or stories that you might have overlooked. Third, consider leveraging AI tools like ChatGPT to brainstorm. Many programs expect this to be the case and are open to it. However, you need to be prepared to discuss your use of these tools when necessary. So read the applications closely, read their disclosures closely, and make sure that you abide by them. Next, give yourself time to brainstorm across multiple sections. These questions are really difficult to nail down in one sitting. And if you're still working on test prep and won't tackle the essays until you're done, at least give yourself the opportunity to jot down some ideas somewhere, because you never know when a great idea is going to come to you. And it could be while you're doing other things, right? In the shower, driving, working out, etc. And finally, let your brainstorming take you in a number of directions. So I encourage my clients not to self-edit too early in the process. You risk eliminating a great idea early on, which could be an interesting story to tell that differentiates your experiences and perspectives. So in terms of actually writing, I do recommend that you create an outline. And this is going to give you a really solid roadmap to follow and often makes the writing process a whole lot easier. So if you're stuck, writing down some bullet points can really help get things going. But importantly, this is an opportunity to break free from that typical 5-paragraph essay that many of us learned in high school. I encourage you really to go beyond that, because the best responses for these essays that pique the attention of admissions committees tell a story. So place yourself at the center of the action rather than tell of something that happened, and take the readers to some of the key moments. Show through your narrative what happened rather than telling of it in the third person. And consider creating a strong hook to engage the reader off the bat. This is some of the stuff that really makes a difference as you present your candidacy. Then finally, and you may have heard this from admissions committees already, but be authentic. This comes through in your storytelling and showing rather than telling, but also ensure that your writing comes across in your own tone of voice. So read it out loud. I do this often. It feels silly, but it really does help me. And ask yourself if the reading is conveying how you communicate. Don't use overly flowery language. This is a huge red flag, especially because ChatGPT's language tends to be over the top. Be yourself and write how you would talk. So finally, I'm going to touch on just a few quick tips for your recommenders. I know that many of you have some anxiety about recommendations because they are seemingly out of your control. But there are things that you can be doing now to play a proactive role in shaping your recommendations. Whether your supervisor has written countless MBA recommendations before, or whether your recommender is like new to the process, I highly recommend that you undertake these steps. So first, communicate your goals and ensure that your recommenders are on board. And I'm saying that your recommender has to be, I'm not saying this person rather has to fully support your career decision. Many are really bummed when great teammates and employees want to move on. However, you can gain alignment with them at least and get them to understand what you're trying to achieve through the MBA course. Second, provide your recommenders with materials to work with. I recommend an updated copy of your resume, which is one of the first materials you can create as part of this process, along with what I call a cheat sheet, which shares bullet points of specific examples in response to the questions that are asked of the recommender. What I'm not suggesting here is that you write the recommendation. That is not what the admissions committee is looking for, and they can tell when this happens. However, what I am suggesting is that you help make the process easier for the writer so that he or she has something to react to rather than start with a blank page. And then finally, offer your support wherever possible. I recommend my clients, they set a soft deadline 1 to 2 weeks before the application deadline so that this gets in a little beforehand and alleviates some of your stress. And as an admissions consultant, I've also played a role in the process and supported recommenders directly. I've read materials, I've discussed the process with them, and I've made them feel supported as an objective third party. I know that was quick and dirty on the recommendations piece, but do let me know as questions come up. There are many ways that you can work with your recommenders to make this process a little more painless. So finally, I'm going to shift to Q&A, but before I do that, I want to make sure that you have full knowledge of the suite of target test prep products and services. Did you know, rather, that you can try us for 5 days for free? This is not available just for the GMAT, but also across the GRE and EA tests. So definitely take advantage of that if you aren't using a program for support already. And also avail yourself of a free consultation with me so we can talk one-on-one about your MBA application strategy. So my consultations generally run longer than 15 minutes, and this provides you with some insight with how you can put your best foot forward. If you're interested in working together, we have a couple modes of working. First, we can work on a comprehensive package that includes all of the activities you see on the left side here. It is a true end-to-end offering that leaves no stone unturned in your process. But if you're not needing that, we also have a la carte options available if you have very specific needs across your resume or your essays or interview or more. And a third option, which many of my clients take advantage of, is signing up for a package for maybe 2 or 3 schools and then supplementing the remainder with hours. So just a few things to think about there. I will leave it on this screen. So please use the chat feature to ask questions, and I'm going to get to as many as possible. And of course, here's the link for the free consultation. And anyone on the webinar is, of course, eligible for 5% off. That is for hourly or package services. So we have some questions coming in. And let's take a look at these and consider keep thinking about what you want to ask and shoot them in the chat. This person is asking specifically about recommenders. This person says, I was terminated from my previous job without a reason provided by my supervisor, which was a complete surprise to me. I'm sorry that happened to you. And I was wondering if it would be fine to ask someone more senior than me at the company who I worked with on several projects intimately. Yeah, I think that might be a stronger direction to go, just given that you're unsure where your recommendation, or sorry, your relationship with your supervisor lies. And it might be risky to ask for a recommendation, especially since you don't know the circumstances of your termination. So many of the programs, as you may have noticed, ask for a recommendation from your direct supervisor. However, that's not always possible. So if this other person worked with you intimately and has strong examples to share, you might be best to go with that direction. I would explain your choice of recommender in an optional essay to kind of just build the credibility of that person. Next question is about a holistic look at one's candidacy. So this person says, if we have a really low GPA, but a high GMAT, and all other admissions content, including essays, are stellar, how will admissions react? Will we be severely disadvantaged when applying to M7 schools? As you know already, the M7 schools are very competitive. You can take a look at the class profiles and see what the ranges and averages are across, test scores and GPAs. But what many of them will tell you is that they undertake a holistic evaluation of your candidacy. And the reality is that not everyone is perfect everywhere, right? So you will see people with success who might have, a lower than average GPA or test score, for example. If you execute well, you will be evaluated, right? I don't know the circumstances completely, so severely disadvantaged seems extreme in your scenario. However, with the M7 schools and the level of competitiveness that they are at, there's no sure bets, right? You are probably aware already that, the admissions process is competitive and you need to plan for that. So if you are absolutely intent on enrolling in business school next fall, then you might want to pick some options outside of the M7 just to hedge your bets as well. Next question is about campus visits, and this person's asking for tips. I would be a sponge on campus visits. It really does depend on, where you are in the process. And, I think it's important to go in with some working hypothesis of, what you want to do post MBA and why you are interested in that program, and perhaps a couple specific things that you want to ask about certain programs, courses, initiatives, experiential learning, etc. But these programs are aware that you're on campus to learn. So bring your questions and bring specific questions that can't be answered on the website, right? Don't come to an info session in person and ask simple questions that can be answered in the class profile. If I were visiting campuses today, I would be really honed in on, what that student experience is like, how they've been supported by career services, what the experience has been like in relation to what they expected the experience to be like. So everyone has this idea of what it's going to be like when they get to business school, and something happens, or their perception just shifts based on the reality that they face once they get there. So to sum up that response, right, come with some information, but the program recognizes that you're not an expert on the program and you're there to learn, and just ask some somewhat informed questions that will give you a little more nuanced knowledge about the program. You have to also recognize that in any of these interactions across webinars, interviews, class visits, etc., like the program wants to make a good impression on you, right? Like this is a two-way street where, of course, you want to make a great impression for them, but they want to be good hosts. They want you to come away with a positive association of the program. If you don't, right? If they don't make a good impression on you, they didn't do their job. So keep that relationship in mind as well. This person is asking about their work experience. Worked at 4 companies, average 1.5 years, gaps between jobs from 3 months to 9 months, for different reasons. Was laid off from last job after 9 months and taking the year off to apply for MBA and travel after. I'm anxious about whether the gaps would be looked down upon. Prior to COVID, it was you were at a disadvantage if you were applying to business school without a job. But then the world changed, and numerous candidates were applying to MBAs without jobs because the market had been in flux, and I think still is quite a bit in flux these years. So it's not uncommon to to have gaps in your resume. You really have to be thorough in addressing what you were doing during those times, right? Job searching takes up a lot of time, but hopefully you were keeping up with your other activities, extracurriculars, volunteering, etc. I've had candidates who have taken a year off or taken significant amount of time off to apply for the MBA. That isn't the best reason to take off time. Hopefully you can point to instead other things that you have been doing, like traveling, volunteering, pursuing your interests, etc., to discuss as part of that optional essay and your application. Okay, any other questions? Looks like we've addressed the major ones here. I'll give it just another minute, but I hope this was helpful in some way in shaping your approach to the essay topics, to working with your recommenders, and to keeping you on pace. We have another question that is about the second recommender, because some programs do ask for 2 recommenders, and the first recommender for this person is the current supervisor, which is great. And the second question is between another supervisor and a volunteer supervisor. Like, this is the type of nuance I get into with my clients. Like, the volunteer supervisor may provide a different perspective that isn't redundant with another professional supervisor recommendation, but I hesitate to give you like a clear direction here because I just don't know enough about your circumstance. Good question here about family business. Does working for my family business count as real work experience? It does, especially if it's post undergrad work experience, and, in a part to full-time capacity. Definitely lean into that since high school. Got it. I would definitely include that. I, again, don't have enough details and to tell you how exactly to construct that narrative, but, a number of my past clients have worked at family businesses, and there are specific programs that are focused on family business. So don't discount that experience. One question was, do I work directly with recommenders if needed? And the answer is yes. Some really want a helping hand to walk through the process, and they really care, right? Like the ones I've worked with, like it's not that they are, clueless about writing a response, but they want to make sure that it's appropriate for the audience, and they want to make sure that it's additive to the application. So I am a resource who can, help them through that process, either by like talking through them through the process, reviewing what they wrote, etc. I think this caps off our questions. So thank you guys so much. Hope this was helpful. And, of course, reach out to me via the link if you want to talk further, and hope you have a great rest of your Thursday and weekend, and take care. Talk to you for part 4 next month.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.